This program, of course, is presented by Pro Wrestling Illustrated, the most widely read, widely sold, and respected wrestling magazine in the world today.
Welcome to the Pro Wrestling Illustrated Podcast, Episode 9. I'm Al Castle, PWI Senior Writer, joined, as always, by fellow Senior Writer Dan Murphy. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing today, Al?
I'm good. And we've got a lot to talk about today. We're going to be talking about some of the fallout from Fastlane last Sunday, also looking ahead to WrestleMania now that the card is starting to take shape, and maybe cover some other current events. And the plan is to have special guests later on today. We're going to be joined by Davey Richards, one half of the Wolves, TNA Tag Team Extraordinaire, and hope to talk to him about all kinds of issues. Dan, as I said, we're now a few days away from Fastlane. We're recording this on a Thursday. First of all, what did you think of Fastlane overall? I know it's interesting. I saw it with the volume down because at the same time I was watching the Oscars. I'm a big movie buff, and that took precedence. So in some ways, I think I enjoyed it more than others because what I kept hearing was how dead the crowd was.
Yeah. Sometimes it's better to do that where you just kind of let the matches. What I like doing, I like seeing a lot of the pay-per-views at I like seeing in a bar setting, where you have a bunch of people together and you're watching the show. You don't really hear the commentary as much, but you hear the reaction from the people in the room. And sometimes that actually adds a lot to the show, which is kind of a shame that's where we are in this era. It used to be that Jim Ross and some of the great announcers would add so much to a show. Now, a lot of times the announcers, per se, kind of detract from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes it's better to watch it with the sound down. And I could definitely see that with this show. The matches were all solid, good matches. The crowd wasn't really as loud as some other recent shows. So it might be a better show to kind of watch with the volume muted and kind of listen to the Oscars going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that everything turned out on the high end of expectations as far as execution of storylines and matches, that kind of thing. That's certainly the case with Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns. A lot of trepidation about that match and how the fans would react and whether Reigns could hold his own in what was really his first singles main event slot and against a worker like Daniel Bryan. Now, the easy thing to say is that Daniel Bryan carried him to a very good match, and maybe that's partially true, but I also think Roman Reigns showed a lot, showed that he could carry his end of a big-time main event match. The fans did not reject him. I mean, maybe they weren't in love with him as much as Vince McMahon would like. But again, I don't know that they loved anything that night. But I do think, if it is the case, well, let me ask you, what do you think? If this is the case and this is what we're getting, and it looks like it, the fact that WWE is in fact sticking to its guns and going with Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania?
Well, I think there's some unfinished business with Daniel Bryan. I mean, we've discussed this before, and it's been said, but Daniel Bryan all last year was the enemy of the Authority. He was the storyline hero against Triple H and Stephanie, and he won the title. They stripped him of the title. He came back from a career-threatening injury. And that storyline hasn't finished. It hasn't played out. And now we're being told to kind of, well, it doesn't matter. Forget about it. Everything that we've watched and supported for the past year and a half, hey, Daniel Bryan's on the back burner now. He's going for the Intercontinental title or whatever they're going to slot him at Mania. And now Roman Reigns is the guy. So it's kind of a shame that there's this unfinished business and the fans haven't really had the full storyline with Daniel Bryan unfold. That being said, it's nothing against Roman Reigns. I mean, he has a lot of potential. He could be a good main event player, but he's still largely unproven. The good thing about WrestleMania, I guess, is we all, as fans, begin to think of WrestleMania as the be-all, end-all, the main event of WrestleMania. But, there's other pay-per-views. There'll be another pay-per-view a month later, 2 months later, and so on. if the Roman Reigns experiment bombs out, by SummerSlam they'll take the belt off him and put it on, who knows, John Cena, Randy Orton, one of the safe guys. So I guess it's kind of nice to have an opportunity with Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns. These guys are kind of fresh for pay-per-views. It's an intriguing matchup. And if it doesn't work, there are plenty of other backup choices out there. So I guess that's the direction we're going in.
Yeah, that's true. You can write the course later in the year. But the fact is, WrestleMania only happens once a year. And if you blow it, it's a pretty big deal. Not just from a fan standpoint of enjoyment and that kind of thing, but I think a lot of WWE's business for the year relies on WrestleMania.
But not as it used to. I mean, now with the WWE Network, it's not like you're using that it used to be that WrestleMania was the big pay-per-view, that was the big event for the year. With the network now, you're moving away from the pay-per-view buys into the subscription model. WrestleMania doesn't have to be as big to carry the company through the year as it used to be.
I think it's big in a different way. I mean, I think what they're going to be counting on is to drive up subscriptions heading into WrestleMania and to hold on to those people. So that million that they brag about is really kind of precarious, right? I mean, it came after giving away a free month and all that. I think the real number is short of 1 million, maybe quite a bit short. If they can hook in a lot of viewers with WrestleMania, then they really can have a steady million for the rest of the year to grow on. And if we saw the canceled WWE Network movement after the Royal Rumble, how much impact that really had, who knows? But you got to think it was something. It was in the thousands, if not the tens of thousands, of people who canceled. And if there's really a backlash against Reigns and Lesnar, and I don't think there will be. I mean, I don't think it's going to be that vocal, but it could make a difference in their year. Now, you touched on it. I think a really interesting and important part of the story is what they now do with Daniel Bryan. And I guess it's not a spoiler because this is going to go up after tonight. But the talk is that they're getting him involved in an intercontinental title picture. We saw some hints of that on Monday night with R-Truth on commentary and Ziggler and Barrett and who was the other one? Somebody else got involved. Oh, Ambrose.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it and really read about it, but I understand that Bryan somehow gets involved in that Thursday night. So I don't know if they're building to some kind of 5-way or something. I just pretty much literally can't imagine a worse use of Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania if that's the plan. The talk of a Sheamus match or even a Ziggler match, a one-on-one match, starts to sound really good if the plan is to kind of hide him in a 5-way match for the Intercontinental title. I almost can't believe it.
Yeah, and it's not officially yet. I mean, it looks like that's the direction that they're going in, and it's certainly a shame. I mean, maybe you do a Ambrose versus Bryan singles match somehow kind of develops
that
out
could
of
work.
this.
I mean, that's something.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. I think it's really terrible that you're scaling the guy back as much as they seem to be doing, and not even taking him out of the world title picture down to the Intercontinental title, but burying him in a multiple man match. I mean, he's a great grappler. It obscures his true skills. He really needs that WrestleMania match where he can go 20, 25, 30 minutes against somebody and really showcase those abilities, because honestly, Bryan really hasn't had that yet.
Yeah, I'm really skeptical if that's where they're going. But if it did end up being some multiple-person match at WrestleMania for the IC title, I can't imagine the match as a whole gets 10 or 11 minutes. And then you think of, with that many guys involved, how much Bryan could actually be showcased. It's kind of unthinkable, and that's why I'm not sure I totally buy it. Ambrose might be, a consolation prize if they were given some amount of time out there. But I just don't understand why WWE kind of puts themselves in a position, for better or for worse. You would think that they would want to do everything to have that crowd in Santa Clara on their feet, loud, excited, loving WrestleMania, all of that, and to deliberately kind of set yourself up for a potential rejection, a potential very vocal rejection I don't know why they would do it.
I agree. Yeah. Vince McMahon used to say in interviews, he used to always say that he had his finger on the pulse of his fan base because, as he said, we run, basically test panels every night or market studies every night because every night they do shows and they hear the feedback of the fans and they always know what the fans are asking for. But at this phase, it's almost like, yeah, we know what they're asking for. We don't care. We're telling this story, and that's the way it's going to go.
Yeah.
So it's curious, and I'm not sure why they're going down this road.
Again, and I've got mixed feelings about it because there's definitely part of me that praises them for having a long-term plan. When we were growing up, the WrestleMania main event would be in place a year in advance.
Yeah.
And they'd book backward from that. And they got so far away from that a lot of years it seemed like they weren't sure what WrestleMania was going to be 3 weeks before the show. And for better or for worse, again, they made the call that it was going to be Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar at least a year ago, maybe more. And they've seen it through. Whether that's, again, the pun, what's best for business or not, remains to be seen. I was thinking about this, and I kind of liken it to that the final play in the Super Bowl this year. That pass gets intercepted, so it's the stupidest, most idiotic decision in the history of the Super Bowl, right? If it's completed, it's genius.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So it's kind of the same thing. Whether this was the right call or not, I guess depends on where WWE is later this year, where Roman Reigns is later this year, whether he catches lightning in a bottle like I think Vince McMahon expects, whether throughout the year, again, the clamoring is for Daniel Bryan. We'll see, and we'll see about driving people to PWI-online.com to subscribe to the magazine. You can get 6 issues of Pro Wrestling Illustrated, the most respected publication in all of wrestling, for just under $21. That is just $3.50 an issue, a fantastic value, half off the cover price. We're still doing fantastic work at PWI. The current issue on newsstands now is our big Year in Wrestling, includes all the achievement awards. It's one of the biggest issues of the year. You definitely want to check it out. Brock Lesnar's Wrestler of the Year. A lot of controversy there. We talk about how fans arrived at that decision. We also go over Match of the Year, Tag Team of the Year, Rookie of the Year, all the big awards. We've got all kinds of great photos from throughout 2014, memories. It's really just a great resource to kind of look back on a year of wrestling. I think any fan who is familiar with Pro Wrestling Illustrated really cherishes the year-end issue. So you definitely want to go out of your way, check it out. Rather than just buy the one issue, go ahead and subscribe. You'll save a lot of money, and you'll see all the great work we keep doing at PWI. Dan, what are you working on for the next issue?
Actually, the next issue is going to be the PWI poll. So I'm compiling all of the data for the poll. That's where we talk to. It used to be we talked to the kind of wrestling insiders. We had a panel of wrestlers and managers, referees, other people involved with the business. Now we actually do kind of a cross sampling of some of our subscribers, and we ask them questions of who is pound for pound the best wrestler in the world. What's the state of the business today? What's the most devastating finishing move? Things like that, and it's really kind of a nice way to take a look at what our fans believe are the real kind of rising stars, and really kind of gauge where the industry is right now. Yeah. So I'm compiling all of that and working on that right now for the new issue.
And that's exactly the kind of reason that people should subscribe to PWI. Maybe you subscribe for a PWI 500 or year-end issue, and you discover something like the PWI poll. Which I've been reading for years, since before I was working with the magazine, and it really is a lot of fun to read. It's really eye-opening, really raises some interesting questions. So definitely a reason by itself to pick up an issue and to subscribe. I've got the full interview with Alberto El Patron running in the next PWI. People got a sample of it here on the podcast, but we go a lot more in depth in the full interview. That's going to be in the magazine. I got a fun feature coming. It's the WrestleMania issue, usually the one that comes out right before WrestleMania. And we had a lot of talk about what can we do this year that would be different. And what we came up with was WrestleMania 1 versus WrestleMania 31. And basically it's fantasy booking, taking a lot of the stars and competitors from the first WrestleMania 30 years ago and pitting them against some of the stars of this year's WrestleMania. And I had a lot of fun with it. Definitely.
How did the executioner fare?
I don't think he'd make the card. He might be on the dark match.
Oh, that's terrible.
Who would we pit against the executioner?
Yeah,
I don't know. These days, maybe Daniel Bryan might be the equivalent. So you definitely want to do that. Again, go to PWI-online.com if you want to save some money and get the magazine quicker. You can pick up the digital version, subscribe to that. It's just $14.99 for 6 issues and $2.50 in it. Well, $14.99 works out to $2.50 an issue. I forget what the actual price of downloading just one is, but it's a value. It's a bargain, less than the printed copy, and looks great on your digital device, your laptop, what have you.
It's really pretty cool. If anyone listening hasn't checked out the digital version, you can page through, you can zoom in, it's really a neat interface that they have. So it's definitely worth checking out.
Yep. And if it is just one issue that you want, you can do that. You can order one issue of the print magazine. I know a lot of people hearing probably you just don't have many other options, not a lot of places to pick it up at a newsstand. And you can do that. You could buy a single issue for $5.95 online, and we've got some discounts on some back issues. So definitely want to check that out. PWI-online.com. Follow us on Twitter @officialPWI, and drop us an email here at PWI Podcast @outlook.com. Dan, let's talk about some more current events. Well, I think we've covered WrestleMania plenty. Why don't we talk a bit about this whole mess with CM Punk? It's funny. I mean, it seemed to finally die down for a while, and now it's back, and it's gotten almost ridiculous with these videos of CM Punk's lower back surfacing, and all these different pictures to analyze. And the story, I guess, changed even some more, or grew a little bit bigger this week with the whole exchange between AJ Lee and Stephanie McMahon. For people who don't know, Stephanie McMahon tweeted something following Patricia Arquette's Oscar speech where she talked about female empowerment, that kind of thing. Stephanie went online on Twitter to kind of support that call, and AJ Lee responded basically saying, well, if you're so much in favor of equality for women, why do divas make a lot less money than male wrestlers do? Somewhat paraphrasing there,
right.
But it was very much one of those, kind of moments. Got her. Again, something that kind of died down seemed to be brought back up this year. What are your thoughts?
Well, there's a couple things there. On the CM Punk side, I guess the pendulum kind of swung back a little bit. I mean, Punk went on Colt Cabana's podcast and really kind of aired his grievances, and talked about all the reasons why he left WWE, and claimed about the WWE doctors really kind of putting him in an unsafe working environment where he wasn't getting the treatment he needed. WWE kind of came back at it. If you're going to come out and make those allegations, you're going to have to be prepared to back them up. And now WWE is suing Punk over that. So I mean, we'll never know the exact results. We'll never know what the doctor told Punk and what he didn't. Although, Punk going out and kind of lashing out the way he did on Cabana's podcast was a little bit unprofessional, I'd say. Especially because he'd already had the agreement with WWE. He'd already, come to terms with them, and then still kind of went out and buried the company on the way out. So kind of a crappy way to do business, I think, on the Punk side. But more will come out, as I'm sure it will, as WWE kind of sues now and looks to get to the truth of the matter, whether or not Punk was really wrestling with a severe staph infection that could have been life-threatening and everything else that he alleged on that podcast.
Yeah.
AJ is kind of an interesting thing, too. Obviously, she's married to CM Punk, and there's some bad blood between her husband and the company, and that puts her in a tough spot. But there's also this weird thing where Stephanie McMahon plays a villain. She plays a heel on TV. She's the top heel, arguably, in WWE. And for AJ to, kind of take a shot at her about the divas and this whole trending topic of give divas a chance that happened earlier this week, it actually kind of makes sense storyline-wise. I mean, AJ as a babyface would kind of take a shot at a heel owner. So it kind of works as a storyline move even without the entire relationship with CM Punk and some of the other things that are going on. So I think that they could really develop that and make it into something. Maybe give the Divas a real match at WrestleMania this year. Maybe a 15, 20-minute match where they can actually show their stuff, whoever it may be, whoever they end up putting on. Because on Monday, I don't know if you saw this. Did you catch the Bella match against it was a tag match against the Bellas against Paige and Emma?
I was half paying attention.
Yeah, if you blinked, it was over.
Yeah.
The Bellas came in. There was literally one move, and they hit the old kind of X-Pac face buster, and it was done. It was 25 seconds, and it was really, it felt just awkward how, you give 4 minutes for entrances, less than 30 seconds for the match, and it's like, wow, these are your top women, and right. You're really, really burying them. So yeah. I think that the movement and AJ's shot came at the right time because Monday's match was pretty, it really kind of buried the division.
The other part of the story is that Vince McMahon also tweeted, I don't think it was directly in response to AJ, but just kind of to the whole give the Divas a chance movement, and he said something to the effect of, we hear you, tune in, that kind of thing, sort of suggesting that changes are on the way. The other part of it, something we discussed on WWE's own network, they're kind of giving a primer on the right way to feature female wrestling on NXT, and then what you see on Raw is so different. So there might be some added pressure for WWE to kind of step up its game. All that said, I have a really hard time believing that things are cool between AJ Lee and CM Punk. I just can't imagine seeing how ugly it's gotten between her husband and the company, and now the company suing her husband, which in effect is suing her in as much as they are creating this household together. I don't know how you just jump right back into a storyline with WWE.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, it's one of those things though where I hate to use this expression, but it's an old one and it's a good one. The question, is it a work or is it real? Step one is it a work? Yes, it's always a work. And if not, see rule number 1. In other words, it's right. A work. So even if it begins as a shoot, it can be developed into a work. So
absolutely.
That's what wrestling does. So there's definitely some truth to all of this. There's some bad blood, but if it's quote unquote best for business to turn this into an ongoing storyline, it only makes sense to do that, which is kind of what I think is going to happen.
Yeah. As far as Punk, you said maybe we'll never know, but I think there's some things that we should be able to know, or at least should be well documented. Whether CM Punk had a staph infection, I got to imagine that there are medical records that address that or not. I mean, if he saw a doctor, and if you heard the story that he gave on Cabana's podcast where the doctor punctures it and, stuff shoots on the ceiling.
Yeah.
Unless he's seeing, some doctor out of some mob movie where he met him in an abandoned warehouse or something like that, there's going to be medical records. The flip side is I'd have to think WWE has got more evidence or lack of evidence for that matter to go and pursue litigation other than looking at photos or video of CM Punk's back from one match. I mean, either he had this thing or he didn't have this thing. I can't imagine it was completely made up. Maybe exaggerated. Maybe the timing was off in Punk's memory somewhat. but I don't think it's something that he just kind of created out of whole cloth. But you're right. I remember listening back on that podcast, and for all his stories, I did think the one that WWE would be most mad about and would have the most reason to be mad about was his indictment of their doctors and their medical care. And I remember that the response, pretty much the only response they put out afterwards, addressed that, how because that's a pretty serious accusation to say that WWE's doctors are not taking care of talent or not diagnosing or treating something as serious as a staph infection or even recognizing it. That's pretty serious stuff. So we'll see. I mean, to me, what I'm curious about is whether Punk makes any public response or whether now this just completely moves into kind of in the courts and it's the last we hear about it, at least for a long while.
Yeah, I that's what I would think would happen. As I was trying to say before, he had a settlement with WWE, and everything had kind of blown over until he showed up on the podcast, and now they went back and forth. If Punk were a smart man, yeah, let it blow over, go to court, and that's kind of it. But Punk does have a way of using social media and dropping pipe bombs and popping up every once in a while. In fact, he just threw a tweet out there that kind of insinuated that he might be looking for a match against Samoa Joe in Ring of Honor. Yeah. And whether or not that's true or not, or Punk just being Punk, he tends to kind of just throw things out there, and whether it's through Twitter or on his buddy Cabana's podcast or anything else, he tends to kind of make trouble for himself, I guess. Yeah. So we'll see. I'm sure that we haven't heard the end of this entire topic yet.
Yeah, you just touched on it, and we reported the news right after it broke in our last podcast about Samoa Joe's departure from TNA. News came out just yesterday, Wednesday, I think, or maybe Tuesday, that he was returning to Ring of Honor. I guess not a huge surprise. It's a logical next step for him.